2020. Boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, boxing's biggest fights, boxing's greatest memories and moments. We do it all with tremendous style and panache, and with Lee Groves out there in friendly West Virginia. He's an author, he's a writer, he's a CompuBox counter and historian. He gets to wear all of those hats and then some today. How you doing, Lee?
Doing well. Although I'm not sure where I fit in with the style and panache part. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the hat.
Just listen. If you get the if you get that plug, just stick with it. Go with it. Go with the flow, as they
Take the win,
as they say. Yeah. So let's start out. We have a lot of important recapping to do, including something that we're taping on. What day is it? It's Monday. So when we just had something take place in Japan, we're going to talk about. But up first, I guess we're going to talk about a redhead and Las Vegas and a Munguia.
Yes, indeed. The big fight of last weekend saw Saul Alvarez retain his undisputed 168-pound championship with a decisive decision victory over Jaime Munguia, his mandatory challenger in the WBC and WBO. The result was expected, but the way Alvarez achieved it was not, because this might have been his most dominant all-round performance against a high-level opponent since he defeated Callum Smith 3.5 years ago. There was no talk about slippage. There was no talk about slow starts. There was no talk about second-half slumps. He was precise. He was punishing. He was consistent from start to finish. I scored at 117-110 for Alvarez, the same as Tim Cheatham. How did you score it, and what did your eyes see?
Yeah, well, my scorecard, 117, 111. Of course, I had one round even with that. I think the knockdown was at round 4, I think, when Canelo scored the knockdown with the right uppercut.
Right.
I thought that Canelo looked very professional, very workmanlike. He did what he had to do. He found his openings and was able to, to land some heavy punches. He fought in different styles. There were times he even out jabbed Munguia. I think it was just a clear case of a great aging fighter with so much acumen and high pugilistic IQ and still great power in both hands, that was able to do what he wanted to do for the most part. He did it in spurts because Canelo doesn't fight 3 rounds. He doesn't need to with that IQ against this type of an opponent. And, I tweeted out that a loss can destroy you, it can define you, and it can improve you. And I think this loss for Munguia will be something that he can learn from. He didn't take a beating. His face looked pretty good after the fight. He actually won some rounds. And I think the experience will do him a world of good. I don't ever think he will be a Canelo or anything like that. I don't see that kind of greatness from him, but I sure liked what I saw from him Saturday night, and I think he put up the best effort that he could given where he is at.
I agree. And one thing, we talk about your eyes, the best in boxing, according to Burt Randolph Sugar. And during one of the early rounds, you texted me that he was setting up Munguia for the uppercut. And tell me, just go deep here. What technical things did you see in Alvarez that suggested to you he was doing that? And what did you see in Munguia that told you he was vulnerable to the uppercut?
Yeah. Boxing at a high level, I always like to say DLT, distance, leverage, and timing. And I could see that Canelo was letting him inch in, and then gauging as he would pull back. For Munguia, his entrance at times was okay, but then he'd get off balance, and the exit was wrong. He would pull straight back or pull away with his head down, and Canelo just got into that position and lined up the right uppercut and pulled the trigger on it. He threw a couple lighter to set up the one that would put, and it's a shot. Munguia never saw the shot. He never saw it. To his credit, he got right back up. And that's the brilliance. We've seen him do that I saw him do it against Curtis Stevens. And who else did James? Was it Kirkland that he set up? And Canelo does it with everybody pretty much. And the great thing about him, Floyd and him are both counterpunchers. But when Floyd would do it, would set up a shot, parry or feint or roll, and then bam, he would do it to pot shot. Canelo does it with power, and it's different. They're different kinds of power punches. So I could just see that Canelo was setting that up. It's beautiful at a high level, isn't it? When you see somebody with that kind of precision and technique. And so I could see it. To Munguia's credit, he wasn't quite hit with a second one as much. I thought Canelo after that might just break him down and then take him out. But to Munguia's credit, he always had something, had reserve. He was always trying to win the fight. Canelo knew that and saw that this guy still has the resistance. So I'm just going to win, just win, baby. And that's what he did.
Yeah, and let me point out that Smitty gave me that text about 3 or 4 minutes before it actually happened.
Yeah,
and it was pretty amazing to see. On last week's show, I said that Munguia needed to start fast and to take the play away from Alvarez in the early rounds. And I think in the first 3+ rounds, he was doing just that. I had him ahead 2-1 after 3 rounds, and he was having a pretty decent 4th round until that huge uppercut landed. But from that point on, Canelo was in control. I remember watching the later rounds of the fight and thinking to myself that Canelo was a mix of the older version of Roberto Duran, the 40-ish Roberto Duran, who was so calm inside, so composed, so relaxed, but also the prime version of Julio Cesar Chavez, because Chavez's connects, especially with power shots, were so clean and so accurate and so well thought out. Canelo really found something in that fight. We saw for the first time in a long time his greatness.
Yeah,
and, we'll see.
And the thing is, Munguia, you got to not only be busy, you got to stay busy, and you also got to stay balanced. And that's why later on, I'm so looking forward to our fantasy fight at the end of this program, which will feature Canelo and who's that other guy with the name that starts with the last name that starts with a C?
That would be Joe Calzaghe.
Yeah, I can. That'll be at the end of the program when we do our fantasy fights. We both love doing this, so I can't wait to break that one down. All right, I'll let you keep going. We got a lot to cover.
Well, I've also said that the Munguia fight was a dress rehearsal for a possible fight with David Benavidez, because like Benavidez, Munguia is tall, he's a volume puncher, he's got good pop on his fists. And I said that if he won well, and you got to say he won well last Saturday night, he might feel better about slotting in Benavidez for September. But it looks like his September schedule is going in some different directions. One, he could possibly fight Edgar Berlanga. A lot of people were crapping on that fight because, yes, he's one of the mandatory challengers, and Canelo has to fight him to remain undisputed, but Berlanga is not on Canelo's level. But then there was a report that Turki Al-Sheikh is considering another man for that slot, and that would be your guy, Terrence Crawford, who is scheduled to fight for the 154-pound title. What are your thoughts about where Canelo goes from here?
Well, if this fight goes through, our Bud's fight would be a hell of a dress rehearsal for Canelo, because is it Magnimov? Is that how you say his name? His opponent?
Madrimov.
Okay. He is around the same size. We looked at this as almost exact same size as Canelo, not nearly as good. So that would be, good for Bud to be at, find what comfortable weight works for him, see how he deals with a man that size. And you know that I've always been craving that matchup. I think it's a phenomenal matchup that I could make a decisive argument for either guy to win. We've already talked a lot about it. So I do not see the Benavidez fight happening. I just don't. And
No.
so I think that would be logical. Two great fighters. Yes, one's a little bigger, the other's a little better, in my opinion. And it would be a fascinating fight, pitting, the great skills of the two. And I would love to see it. And I hope we get to see it.
I hope we get to see it as well. And then at the top of the show, you mentioned that there was a huge fight card in Japan. We're taping on Monday, so it happened just a few hours ago as we're speaking. Japan played host to a card that featured 4 world title fights. And the first 2 fights saw the world champions Seigo Yuri Akui and Takuma Inoue, the younger brother of Naoya Inoue, retain their belts by unanimous decision. But in the third, challenger Yoshiki Takai, a champion kickboxer in another athletic life, won the WBO bantamweight title from Jason Maloney by a unanimous decision in just his 9th pro fight. And in doing so, he joined a host of fellow Japanese fighters who have won widely recognized world titles in less than 10 fights, including Hall of Famer Yoko Gushiken and future Hall of Famer Naoya Inoue. And also, this is the second time in 2 days that a Japanese fighter with less than 10 pro fights won a championship. I think it's Ryosuke Nishida won the bantamweight title, WBO bantamweight or IBF bantamweight title from Emmanuel Rodriguez. So Japan had a very good last couple of days. But then in the main event, Naoya Inoue fought mandatory challenger Luis Nery. And as expected, he retained his undisputed 122-pound title by scoring a 6-round TKO. But here's a plot twist. In doing so, Inoue suffered the first knockdown of his career thanks to a counter left cross to the chin in round 1. But Inoue did what great champions do. He got to his feet. He dusted himself off. He proceeded to score knockdowns in rounds 2 and 5 with 6-inch counter lefts to the chin. And then he finished the fight with a right hand in round 6. Now consider this. Inoue is a 2-division undisputed champion like Crawford. And with this win, his record in widely recognized world title fights is now 20-0 with 18 knockouts. And a strong argument can be made that Inoue is the greatest boxer that Japan has ever produced. And that's a big statement, considering some of the names. Fighting Harada, Yoko Gushiken, Masao Oba, Jiro Watanabe, Takashi Uchiyama. There is a whole host of outstanding Japanese fighters. And Inoue may be standing at the top of the mountain, if not already. And as for the pound-for-pound race, it's clear that it's Bud Crawford and Naoya Inoue, and then just about everybody else, although Usyk could be thrown into the conversation if he beats Tyson Fury. We both agree that Terence Crawford's the number 1 guy because he's done nothing to lose it. But after this performance, Inoue not only has closed the gap, but he has also upped the ante in my eyes. Crawford is set to challenge Madrimov for the WBA title at 154. And if he wants to stay number 1, he not only has to win, he has to win well. So what do you think of that assessment? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I also think Bivol needs to be up there. Beterbiev needs to be up there. I mean, they're all unbeaten.
True.
And so anybody unbeaten, I think, can make the argument. Some guys have more knockouts. Beterbiev is a bigger puncher than Bivol. Bivol's a better boxer than Beterbiev to some degree, at least as in an elusive manner. So I think all of them. But this kid, and he's not a kid anymore. He's 31 years old in a way. To me, he just so much reminds me, not in fighting style, for all you whatever that just want to quickly react to stuff. He's like Manny Pacquiao, who I remember saying this fistic Filipino phenom when he was coming up. Manny was so fast twitch and powerful and could do it all. And even Inoue will never win all the weight division titles that Manny has done. He doesn't have the frame for it. I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at kind of another Manny Pacquiao. And and like you say, an all-time great in Japan and maybe an all-time great period. But I think he's at his ceiling right now. He might be able to go up to featherweight, maybe, and he could do okay there, I think. But that's it. That is it. And was it just a flash knockdown? Yeah, probably. He got up. But I just get that feeling with these guys, like, and you think back to a Roy Jones when they're really tremendous athletic guys and they have such great reflexes. It can go like that. It can just change. You lose a tiny bit, and then maybe, other guys like a Nery catch him. So I think he's phenomenal. I think he's right up there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's brilliant. I love him. And, he's got speed and power. Now he proves he has some balls too. I really, there's what is not to like. And he's the antithesis of Ryan Garcia to me right now. So that's good.
That is very good. And as far as what's next, after the fight, they brought in a mandatory challenger, Sam Goodman from Australia, into the ring. And it was said after the fight that if the negotiations work out, that's probably going to be in a way.
Nobody named Goodman ever beats a monster. Ain't a chance.
Yeah, it should, Sam Goodman, he's earned his spot, but, Naoya in a way is in another class altogether. So that's pretty much it for the reviews.
Okay. Now, are we going to do the, how do you want to do? You want to do the previews right now, or is that what we're set for?
No. We're going to do that for the Smitty Says.
The Smitty Says. Well, I say that we go to break and we'll come back with some previews and some says from one Smitty. We'll be back.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner of the podcast, 120. I'm in Vegas. He is in
friendly West Virginia.
And so what are we doing on this site? Lee did this great job. You ought to see these breakdowns that Lee does for the show. They're so comprehensive, so much so that I'm totally lost. Where are we at? Are we saysing? What are we doing?
We're in the Smitty Says segment.
All right, let's go.
And so let's start. Artur Beterbiev, the highly anticipated June fight between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol for the undisputed light heavyweight championship. It was postponed. It was postponed because of an injury to Beterbiev. I believe it was a meniscus. And so as we're speaking right now, there is no rescheduled date for it. They're thinking about the end of the year. We'll see. But do you think that the organizers are going to have Bivol fight someone else? Or do you think that they're just going to say, okay, we're just going to wait until the end of the year or whenever Beterbiev gets healthy again, and then we'll just go straight to it?
It's a tough call. I think it depends on, I haven't heard about the severity of the meniscus injury. If it's very severe and requires surgery, then I think I wouldn't blame Bivol for having a fight in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been some fighters that have been calling out for the opportunity to step in. I think Joshua Buatsi, one of his, his mandatory challengers, said that he would. There are other fighters that would like to do.
It just depends on the severity. I just want to see those two at 100%. I think what this delay does, I think it helps Bivol.
Yeah.
Because Beterbiev's the older guy, and I think this little setback will give the other guy, again, more time to age. I believe in that stuff. So I think it's an advantage Bivol, and hopefully we see the fight sooner than later, but Beterbiev needs to be at his best.
Now, does this delay change your thought about who might win the fight?
Yeah, right now, I mean, I was lean. It's a pick'em fight. It's going to be a pick'em fight. I think this delay and the fact that it has something to do with the knee, the leg. I think I give a slight edge to Bivol now.
I do as well. It really is. Bivol, I think, is 31, 32 years old. Beterbiev is pushing 40. He's had lots of long layoffs. He has been injured. So
He's going to
kind
have
of
to cut that ring off. He's going to have to, track down Bivol, and that, ask Canelo, isn't easy.
Yeah, it is. But hopefully you're right. They'll have the fight. Both of them will be at 100%. Finally, we'll get the answers. Who is the best light heavyweight in the world? Moving on to the next subject, and this guy seems to be getting into the Smitty says an awful lot lately, and that's Ryan Garcia. And the reason why we're discussing him this time is because of his positive PED test. He tested positive for Osterine as well as 19 Noranderstein. I can't even pronounce the second one. And he tested positive the day before and the day after the Haney fight, as determined by VADA. A lot of issues remain up in the air as we speak, and one of them is: do you think that the result could be changed from a Ryan Garcia victory to a no contest, no decision, or whatever?
If the B sample comes back positive, it absolutely should be changed to a no contest. And I told you something. Lee and I spend a lot of time prepping these shows with conversation, and I said to you about 2 weeks before the fight, and let it be clear that I thought I picked Haney to win hands down. Mm-hmm. But I said I thought Ryan might be juicing by some of the things in you. I think you asked me why, and it was just some things with his veins in his arms and other stuff, and then his attitude, over the top attitude. We know what steroids can do, or juice can do. So it didn't surprise me that he popped positive at all. It did not surprise me. And then his behavior subsequent to that, running down to kiss the ring of Trump and then say, oh, it's all fake news. I've never heard Ryan be political at all before. So to bring politics into it and muddy the waters even further, we really need that right now in this country and in boxing. Right. So I think he's a nutcase. He's a mess. And I was on another show earlier today with Randy Gordon and Jerry Cooney. And look, when I was 25 years old with $50 in my pocket, I was a mess at times, let alone 50 million. So I just hope somebody can get to him and talk to him. Somebody, more mature, somebody older. I guess he tried to talk to Floyd. I don't know what the hell Floyd told him, but Floyd might not be the mentor. Maybe Floyd could help you with that damn idiot shoulder roll you try or lack thereof. But I think he needs to talk to my friend Diamond Dallas Page or somebody a little deeper that might be able to help him with what's going on up here. I hope so.
You also mentioned the B sample, and as we're recording right now, we don't know whether it came back positive or not. But if it does come back positive, he'll likely be suspended. And if you were the decision maker, how long would that suspension be?
So, this is boxing, and I sound like Triple G. This is different. This is the fight game, and he came in overweight by 3 pounds, and then he's test positive. How often, by the way, does that B sample come back negative? Not too often. I'd have to ask Margaret Goodman about that. But I think it should be. I think it should be a year. I think he should be suspended a year. And by the way, he hurt Haney a lot during that fight. And again, we know that it's a little. I know getting hit in football or something in another sport, it's all illegal. It helps runners run faster, but it also helps punchers punch harder. And it's a sport where I think we just had the death of a fighter recently in the sport, a young guy. So I'm you know how I feel about it. I think he should be suspended for a year
Yeah,
if
it
it comes
has to
back
be.
positive.
Considering that boxing, the star fighters fight once a year, maybe twice a year. This schedule has even gone down to the high level prospects. So a year suspension 20 years ago and a year suspension now are two completely different things. It's
True.
like suspending a pitcher 10 games, but he only reports for, twice in those 4 days. It's not going to hurt very much. But I don't know what the New York State Athletic Commission limits are as far as how long they can suspend any fighter, because I think
Yeah.
that's the jurisdiction that's going to be making the decision here.
We'll know we'll
But a
know
year
more.
is,
We'll know
oh,
more.
go ahead.
We'll know more soon. Smitty says talking about Ryan Garcia gives me heartburn, so let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on indeed. And let's move on to the preview of, I guess it's on Saturday, Sunday in Australia. George Kambosos and Vasiliy Lomachenko are going to fight for one of the vacant belts. How do you break down this fight, and who do you think will win and why?
Yeah, I remember one time I think I had Kambosos beating a guy named Haney when I didn't do any film study back in the day. Remember that ill-fated pick. Kambosos has kind of turned out to be, and you had warned me to watch more film. You said he might be a one-hit wonder. He's better than a one-hit wonder, but in a way he's kind of a one-hit wonder. And I think much like Frida Payne with that song "Band of Gold." He had
Right.
the one great performance, and I think against Teofimo, I think that he's nowhere near in the class of Loma. However, Loma's on the other side, going down.
Mhm.
Could possibly Kambosos out hustle him and get a decision, or there's a lot of atrophy, physical atrophy on the body of Lomachenko. He's had a lot of injuries, and so that could happen. But if he has anything really left in that brilliant boxing body of his and IQ, the IQ we know is going to be there. If the body can still do it, then he should win. Then Lomachenko should win.
He should. I think that the very fact that this fight is taking place in Australia, that he's fighting a Lomachenko who has not fought in nearly a year and is coming off a controversial loss to Devin Haney. You talk about the attrition, you talk about the wear and tear and all that. I think that the circumstances, if George Kambosos asked for the perfect circumstances to pull off the upset, it would be this. He would have the crowd in his favor. It's in his home country. He's fighting an aged fighter who's coming off a long layoff. But the thing is that Vasiliy Lomachenko, not too many years ago, was the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He is a shoe-in first ballot Hall of Famer, not just for his professional accolades, but his amateur career on top of that. He was once great, and there's something about great fighters being able to summon one last burst of greatness. Now, we don't know whether that burst happened with the Haney fight, but it could happen here because Lomachenko is driven by one final goal, and that is to become undisputed champion. He came this close to doing it against Devin Haney. A lot of people thought that he did do it. And so now this is the first step toward that goal once more. And, so I think that he will summon that great effort. George Kambosos, he has gotten a lot of mileage out of that victory over Teofimo Lopez. And Teofimo Lopez was in a very bad medical state. He was badly cut. And yet, George Kambosos went life and death with that version of Teofimo Lopez. The decision was not unanimous. And then he loses twice big to Haney. A lot of people thought he lost to Maxie Hughes.
Yeah.
So if you think a guy who should have lost to Maxie Hughes could beat Vasiliy Lomachenko, no, I don't see it. I think
this fight for Lomachenko is it's a really good fight for him right now, much like Munguia was a really good fight for Canelo, because Munguia clearly is not in the class of Canelo. and Kambosos is not in the class of Lomachenko. However, again, stranger things have happened, and I just really, I think I have seen decline in Lomachenko for quite a while. The guy's been fighting forever if you talk about his amateur career, and he's a little guy, and he puts a lot of stress on his body. He trains like a monk, and I just would prefer. I know he's got fights left in him, but I'm one of the, and maybe it's because of where I'm at in my life right now. I don't want to see him hang in there and have this fight, that. He's not going to be undisputed again. It ain't happening. Okay. He can't beat these. I mean, who's he going to beat up there? Is he going to beat Gervonta, or is he going to beat Larger? Who's he going to beat? And he's not beating Gervonta. And who knows if and that's if Gervonta even gets by Frank Martin, which is I think is going to be a pretty good fight. I just think he's done everything he can do at the highest level, and he hasn't had a lot of pro fights, and his mind is okay. Man, get out of Dodge, win this fight, maybe have a couple of so long farewell fights, and get the hell out and come hang out with Smitty in Canastota. Come hang out with Smitty and Lee in boxing's title town. That's where you belong.
Yeah, well, we've now heard what Smitty says, and that is all for the segment right now.
Okay, well, I tell you what, you're going to hear some more, though, when we come back. I am excited. You can see the smile on my face. I know Hank Kaplan would be looking down. We've got, just tease us before we go to the break. What are we going to be talking about? What fistic fantasy fight will we be dissecting and breaking down in our final segment?
Well, this is kind of a timely one, considering that we just saw Canelo Alvarez score an overwhelming victory over Jaime Munguia. Why not match up the best super middleweight of today with arguably the best super middleweight of all time, and that is Joe Calzaghe? How would those styles mix? What does Smitty say would happen in a fantasy fight like that? And what do the numbers say about this particular matchup? That's what we're going to talk about next.
And we'll dissect that fabulous fantasy fight. What a great fight that would be. We'll talk about it right after this.
I got two options. Option one, I can accept defeat. Option two, I can get up. I can get tougher. I can get faster. I can get stronger. And then I go get mine. I made my choice. Have you made yours?
Back in this corner of the podcast, 120, boxing's biggest names, boxing's biggest stories, biggest fights, memories and moments are where we're at right now with a fantasy matchup pitting Saul Canelo Alvarez. We saw him in action the other night against one of my favorites, a guy that I twice shared the squared circle with, as we did two in rings. Twice I was in the ring with the great Hall of Famer from Wales, Joe Calzaghe. So set it up, Lee.
Okay, so let's size up the fighters first. Joe Calzaghe retired in 2008 with a record of 46-0 with 32 knockouts. He was 22-0 in 168-pound title fights, and he eventually became a three-belt champion thanks to his victory over Mikkel Kessler, younger, bigger. He was actually considered to be a very stern test for Calzaghe, but in the second half of the fight, he pulled away and he became a three-belt champion. And he retired after victories against Bernard Hopkins and Roy Jones. Alvarez is 61-2-2 with 39 knockouts. He's 8-0 in super middleweight title fights and is the division's only undisputed champion, at least in the four-belt era. Calzaghe is 5 feet 11 inches tall. He owned a 73-inch reach. So he would enjoy advantages of 3 inches in height and 2.5 inches in reach. But Canelo has a terrific history against taller fighters. He's 7-1 with 3 knockouts against opponents who stand 6 feet or taller. And Bivol is the owner of that one in 7-1. Calzaghe's 5'11", he's close enough. Statistically speaking, the defining difference is going to be their respective work rates. CompuBox has data for 6 of Calzaghe's title fights, and in those, he averaged 71 punches per round, while in 10 CompuBox tracked fights at 168, Alvarez averaged 39 per round. That's a difference of 32 per round. But how many did Canelo average against his 2 southpaw opponents at 168, Billy Joe Saunders and John Ryder? The answer is 38. By the way, that's a little below the 41 punches per round that Calzaghe faced in his 6 CompuBox track fights. But the point is that Canelo does what Canelo does no matter what stance is before him. He does what he does. On offense, Alvarez was more accurate. He landed 38% of his total punches, 49% of his power shots, compared to Calzaghe's 33 and 37, respectively. Calzaghe had the better jab. He landed 7 jabs per round to Canelo's 4. And Canelo was the better body puncher because he had to be. He was a shorter guy fighting taller guys. He had to get inside. Calzaghe was a tall guy. He didn't have to work inside, so he didn't have to be such a superlative body puncher. On defense, both guys are excellent, but Canelo was better. He allowed opponents to land 22% of their total punches to Calzaghe's 28%, and Canelo's opponents landed 28% of their power shots compared to 35% for Calzaghe's opponents. And that in turn leads to the other major difference between the two, the chins. Alvarez has never been knocked down, while Calzaghe has visited the canvas 4 times. He did so against Byron Mitchell in round 2, against Kaberi Salem in round 4, against Bernard Hopkins in round 1, and against Roy Jones Jr. in round 1. And for this reason, I wouldn't be surprised if Calzaghe hit the deck against Alvarez. But the good fighters, and we saw this with Inoue earlier today, the good fighters get up from knockdowns and they recover and they go on to win, and Calzaghe ended his career undefeated. Finally, we all know that while Canelo is very relaxed, very smart, very technically sound, he fights in spurts. Calzaghe, on the other hand, worked 3 minutes per round every round. And that alone, I think, would be the difference in this fight. Because unless Canelo takes him out with one of his precision bombs, I see Calzaghe piling up the points and hustling his way to a unanimous decision victory. Now, how do you see it, Smitty, through your eyes, through your experience, even your personal experience with Calzaghe himself?
Yeah, I love Joe and his late father, Enzo. Great people. Really enjoyed spending time with them. We did our first show with him at the international. The first show I did with him was here in Vegas at Mandalay Bay. In fact, Bernard Hopkins came over and was messing with us when we were doing the in-ring segment. And then I did another in-ring with him in Canastota. You set it up so well and described it so perfectly. They're so different in the way they fought. I mean, Calzaghe was the consummate hustler. Not I won't say feather-fisted, but because he had, I think he had, what was he, 46-0 with like 30-some-odd KOs, I believe.
Yeah,
but
he did.
But he wasn't a power puncher, and he didn't try. He just was all volume, and he could do the volume for 3 minutes for 15 rounds if he were fighting in that 15-round era. And for that reason, I think he gets dropped twice by Canelo early. Round 2, round 4, maybe round 1, round 3 or 4. But he gets up, and he wins 8 of the rounds, and he wins the fight by, you do the math, that would be a couple of points, I believe.
116, 114. And it is significant, though, that you believe that Calzaghe would not only rise from 1 knockdown, but from 2 knockdowns. Very few fighters can get up from multiple knockdowns.
Unless you're named Tyson Fury or something, right?
Yeah.
or
Correct.
Archie Moore or some, but I think it would be because he wouldn't get hit so solid. His style would be a stylistic nightmare for one Canelo Alvarez. This guy is I won't say Bivol on steroids because of what we were talking about earlier, but and maybe I'm catching you off guard because we didn't. Does Calzaghe throw more punches than Bivol?
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah,
He does.
and there you go. And he would not give. What does Canelo do? He downloads data, sets things up, but this guy doesn't give you that time to do that.
No, he starts very fast,
and he's all over the place. I mean, when we did the in rings, he was bouncing around. It was like he had a whole lot of coffee. So I really think Joe, he might be the best. Andre Ward and some others can argue, but he's one of the great 100. He's on the shortest of short list of best ever at that weight, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is. And there are better all-around fighters who have campaigned at 168.
Yes.
Thomas Hearns did.
Oh, yeah.
Roberto Duran
did. Yeah.
Sugar Ray Leonard did.
Yeah.
But when you talk about a long-term, Calzaghe was world champion for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Very few fighters can say that. That is a record of sustained excellence at a single weight that, it really stands the test of time. And that's why I think he's the greatest 168-pound fighter of all time.
Yeah. And I think that I want to hear what boxing fans, I know you're going to make clips of these and put them out there. So I like Joe Calzaghe by unanimous decision. He gets up from 2 knockdowns and he wins 8 of the 12 rounds. Lee likes Calzaghe by decision.
Yeah, I like him by decision. And again, like all these fantasy fights, there's no wrong answer.
Right.
If you match them up 10 times, they're going to split. It's not going to be unanimous one way or the other. It's just that's what we think.
Yeah. When you don't back down, They're like, we're the experts. You're not. So tell us why you think you're in the same league with us. Tell us why your pugilistic acumen, sagation, perspication, and sapience even belongs in the same area code with Smitty and Lee Groves, who does not talk that way. But seriously, we really want to hear from you fans. Yeah. We know you love this stuff. I used to do this with Hank Kaplan back in the day. Now I got young Hank. And also, don't just tell us who's going to win. Tell us why and how they're going to win. And also tell us other fantasy matchups that you would like to see Lee and I break down here on future episodes of In This Corner, the podcast. And I think what I'll do is we'll end things with this is how I closed my show out with Joe Calzaghe back in the day. I can't talk about everything we did in Canastota. We shut down Graziano's one night. I just had a great time. Love the guy. Love Joe Calzaghe. We'll end the show. I think this is probably going to be how Joe Calzaghe wants to be remembered as a fighter and as a man. So long, everybody. At the end of the day, how does Joe Calzaghe want to be remembered as a fighter? And more importantly, as a man?
Just as a man, obviously, as a fighter, I always give my all, even when I've not been 100%. I always give 100%, fight with my heart and soul in the ring. Hopefully, a lot of people remember me as a great fighter. I believe that what I've achieved as a super middleweight should get me rated maybe as the best super middleweight there's been. So I'm pretty happy that what I've achieved, and if I never box again, I'll be a very content guy.
Great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you. Thanks a lot.